Warm welcome to this special episode of ETGovernment's Good Governance and Better Security Leadership Series. My name is Anoop Verma. Today, our guest for this special series is Lieutenant General Anil Kapoor. In the past, Lieutenant General Kapoor has served as the Director General of Electronics and Mechanical Engineers. He has also served as the Director General of Infosystems, where he handled the technology vertical of the Indian Army. At present, he is a board member of the Technology Innovation Hub governing body at IIT Tirupati. He is also a technology advisor to defense and space startups. With his extensive knowledge and experience of defense engineering, defense technologies, and defense manufacturing, he is the right person to provide insights on the vision of Atmanirbharata in the defense sector that India is aiming to achieve in near future. Welcome, Lieutenant General Kapoor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Anoop Verma.
In the fields of software and several other sectors of the economy, the Indian industry is making a mark globally. But we seem to be lagging behind in defense technologies and manufacturing for since independence. Now, in the last 10 years, we have been doing it slightly better. So what is the reason behind our low performance in the defense sector?
Very nice question. Indeed, a very thought-provoking question. And let me begin by saying that when we look at software development or we look at commercial equipment, there is a stark difference between this set and defense equipment. Let me qualify the statement. Now, when you look at defense equipment, firstly, it's a very complex technical stack. It's an information system of systems. Actually, it's a large number of technologies built in. If we take a radar as an example, we've got electronic systems, we got microwave systems, we got electrical systems, we got mechanical systems, we got computer systems, all enmeshed and embedded into the complete technology of radars. But the beauty is that all this is ruggedized. All components, all systems, all assemblies are ruggedized to operate in a very wide dynamic range from -40 to +50, which is not seen in the commercial space. So this is the first very important distinction between a commercial equipment and a defense equipment. The second is, when we look at a typical life cycle of a commercial equipment, it would be 10 to 15 years. I mean, you don't even keep a car more than 10 to, even the government doesn't allow you to keep a car for more than 15 years today. But when you look at a defense equipment, it is a minimum with the Army or Navy or Air Force for 40 to 50 years, if not more. I mean, look at MiG-21s. They are 60s vintage, and we still fly them. It's been over 60 years. So that's a big distinction, which is very important to keep in mind from a defense perspective. And third, therefore, is that when we look at defense equipment, basically what is very important is the life cycle management. Now, with these three very unique features, defense equipment is a very different ballgame. And to become a global champion is indeed more difficult. Now, as we are all aware, there is a historical perspective to it. After our independence, we had inimical borders, which developed soon thereafter, and therefore we became a country which was dependent on imports. All our needs were in a yesterday mode, and therefore we never found the time or the, the infrastructure to create defense equipment of the uniqueness that I've said. And import became the first port of call. And since import became the first port of call, the challenge remained that we never developed ourselves in this defense space. The watchwords were transfer of technology, equipment upgrade or technology upgrade, and therefore we continue to live a life where we were dependent either on the East Bloc, which was Russia-centric, or the West Bloc, which was US-centric. And over a period of time, what we found was that though we had DRDO, we had the wherewithal, we had the industry, we had the public sector undertakings, the defense PSUs, the ordnance factories, but there was a distinct gap between what was required in terms of a state-of-the-art equipment and what could be churned out based on the technology levels which were available with DRDO then, or with the defense PSUs and ordnance factories, because they had still not come of age. And therefore, while low-tech was well attempted, the high-tech needs always remained a pipe dream, and therefore import was the best answer. It is no wonder, therefore, that we've been the largest importer for maybe the longest period of time globally, and that was it. But that said, I think the situation has become much better today. I remember when I joined the army in 1981, we were contemplating of a project called Gul Mohar, and it was overall of T-55 tanks and upgunning them from 100 meters to 105 because that was the requirement. And since the sheer numbers are so large, I mean, you're looking at, say, 1,000 tanks as an example. Each tank, even if you put at a modest 30, 40 crores, you look at the amount of outlay that you need. And therefore, a good option or a workable option is to overhaul them, extend their life, give them a new lease of life, and upgrade them to meet your operational necessities. So that has been the norm for quite some time. And that is why, while the commercial space has, galloped, if I may say, software development has galloped, this space somehow has remained still a pipe dream. And therefore, there's a need to really look at the whole issue of defense equipment de novo, which I'm happy that lately we have started looking at it over the last couple of decades. And as we go along, maybe we'll get an opportunity to talk about it.
Yes. As you said, there has been some improvement now in defense manufacturing in the country. Much of it has happened after the coming of the Modi government in the last 10 years. In the last fiscal, the defense manufacturing reached a record high of about rupees 1.27 lakh crore, which is 16.8% increase over the previous fiscal. So what are the key factors that have contributed to this rise in defense manufacturing in the last 3-4 years?
That's a very good question. Now, let me take a step back. Maybe allow me to get back to, firstly, the previous question that you said, and I'll try and bridge the gap. You see, let's look at software development and the Indian Integrated Guided Missile Development Program. And why I want to bring up this equivalence is that as I come forward into this question, 1984 or so, India embarked on the ICT journey. The computers started coming to India. We were getting a kind of a digital footprint or a computer footprint to start with. And on the other hand, on the defense front, we had the Indian Integrated Guided Missile Development Program to gain self-reliance in missile technologies. Now, there was a dedicated program here, and there was a dedicated software development structure there. So both had, in the commercial space, we had software development, here we had IGMDP. And when we look at it, year 2000, we were quite self-reliant in the digital world. In fact, half the world was eating out of our hands. Indians were well known globally for being masters in software development. And on the missile front, we as a nation were acknowledged as one of the haves in missile technology. I can also add the Indian Space Research Organization, where again, a program for satellite launch and a program for satellite development actually gave us good dividends. So really speaking, what you hit is the nail on the head, that after 2000, and more so when the present government came in 2014 under Mr. Modi, a new lease of life was brought into the infrastructure, into industrial sector and defense industry in particular. We had the Atmanirbharata program, we had the Make in India, we had the Startup India, and we had the Skill India. 4 good prongs actually dedicated for making things happen. So there was a focus of the government. At the same time, industry also got a new lease of thinking and a new lease of life, wherein whatever was earlier the preserve of defense PSUs and ordnance factories largely became open to the private sector as well. So while the floodgates were opening in a, if I may say, incremental manner, here was a seismic outflow, a very bold seismic outflow to the private sector. And private sector suddenly jumped in. We got L&T Defense as a big footprint, Mahindra Defense as a big footprint, Bharat Forge got big into defense in a very, very big way. Adani's came in, Ambani's Reliance was there. So, and many more players I'd not like to name all, but just a couple to say that that kind of fillip actually created a very favorable environment for defense technology. So the defense industrial base really started picking up then. And then we had some very enabling policy decisions. The FDI, which was 26%, was hiked to 74%. And then 100% for wherever, technologies are state of the art and modernization is imminent, provided they find strategic partners in India to do it. So that was a big leap forward, where even the foreign manufacturers got very deeply interested in India. So that was one very big change that we find that brought in this new wave of Indian manufacturing in defense sector. Now, when we look at it from a startup perspective, I think the startup India got a very big boost along with Skill India. We had very young entrepreneurs who in a very short time became unicorns, and they touched on technology chords which were technology gaps and required. And therefore, I think there was a good synergy between the government, the startups, the academia, and the industry. I think this synergy helped in bringing a lot of energy to the R&D sector, and because of which we had a lot of government R&D organizations also became very active. I mean, they also saw competitiveness in the whole game. And therefore, that was another big paradigm shift that has been seen over the last, which has resulted in what you just said. In addition to this, if we look at it from another policy perspective, the defense acquisition procedures were revamped. We had the new procedures DAP 2020, which was a huge upgrade over the previous acquisition procedures. Then defense production and export promotion policy came into being because we could not look at the finite needs of the Indian armed forces. After we meet our requirements, then what? And to make the defense industry economically viable and technologically viable, I think it was a good footprint to step out into the export world, and we saw how the exports have picked up. And by next year, we are looking at a total production of 1.75 lakh crores, which is well within sight, with almost 35,000 crores worth of exports, which is again well within sight. So really speaking, it's a new energy. And what has happened, therefore? What we find is that today the foreign biggies are coming to India for strategic partnership. So there's a huge reversal. Earlier, we used to be stepping out to do strategic partnership. Today, we have created the pull for them to come in, and we've got BrahMos, we've got consortium with the Tejas. Today, US and France both are wanting to make engines in India. And we've got in the naval domain, in the marine domain, a lot of energy in terms of maintenance of ship, MRO of ships, even the US-based ships in India. I mean, a lot of these things are happening because of the new fervor that has got generated in India through Atmanirbharata program. And if I were to name something that happened recently, which was a huge shock and awe globally, is the Zorawar light tank. Larsen and Toubro, who had mastered the K9 gun in a transfer of technology from South Korea, have now in 2 years created the Zorawar light tank. It is unprecedented in speed with which it has been designed and developed. So really speaking, there is huge amount of energy that has come in, primarily because of the focus of the government, support of the government, trust built between industry, government, and maybe the armed forces. And the defense sector today is reverberating, and the defense industry is reverberating with a new enthusiasm to create more. And if I may conclude by saying that really speaking, we find sky is not the limit today. And the best is yet to come. Every day you could feel that.
Atmanirbhar Bharat basically means, I think, make in India. So in today's times, no country is actually making all the products for any major platform in-house. So if you are trying to make it in India a reality and making manufacturing all parts of the technologies in-house, then are we not somehow making it impossible for us to develop advanced platforms? So what are the key aspects of the vision of Atmanirbharata? How do we make it work?
Brilliant. I think it's a very brilliant thought. You see, you're so right. It's not one size fits all. It is not everything that can be developed in India. But I think if we look at a multifaceted, multi-pronged strategy, we have to find areas where we are hugely dependent on import. And if I were to say, if I'm doing 100 rupee worth of import, in which I'm spending 80 rupees in some critical sector and 20 rupees in some other less critical sector, I think I need to fix my critical sector first. It'll give me best dividends. So really speaking, Atmanirbhar Bharat is about creating consortiums, which we have done by opening FDIs, inviting the industry who's who globally to come to us, work with us through joint ventures, through strategic partnerships, through collaborations, and help imbibe technologies that we need, technologies which are material. And therefore, I think with that as the cardinal principle, Atmanirbharta is perhaps the right clarion call with Make in India. I mean, it's not, and both are vetted in a manner that finally we'll have Made in India is coming up. And slowly but surely, we convert ourselves into a global manufacturing hub with this kind of a support. Now, let me dwell a little more into it. Now, when we look at it from a strategic perspective, we have the manufacturing sector, we have the agriculture sector, and we have the service sector. These are the three sectors which really define economy. And if you see, Atmanirbharta is about managing your economy in a manner that you create an economic impact through technological might. And with that as largely the philosophy, I think there is a need to look at manufacturing in a very different perspective, a very different perspective to manufacturing. And I think the government has done good in looking at various missions. We have the mission semiconductor. We do realize that in times to come, where everything is going to be a machine to machine talk. I mean, today we have a human machine interface. Very soon we have machine to machine interface. And it is all about semiconductors. It's all about sensors. It's all about IoT. And if we have to graduate to that level, I think we need semiconductors. For processing speeds to be high, we need quantum technology. We need 6G. And I think this is the focus, which is the technology focus with manufacturing as the mainstay. And therefore, I think when we look at it from a Atmanirbhar Bharat perspective, the focus is right. The emphasis is right. And what we therefore need to do is we need to look at an inclusive, sustainable growth system. We need to look at a system that we create where the environmental aspects, the societal aspects, and the governance aspects are very well looked into. It's very, very important. Because when you look at a mass production, and we've seen it in China, you cannot get into violative modes on environmental norms. It will not be tolerated any longer globally. And India, I think, is doing great job. And we saw that in G20 as well, where we've stood very tall in showing our interest in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations and how we have really harnessed it in the Atmanirbhar Bharat. We have a youth bulge. How we are looking at Skill India, that every hand on the deck gets into a whole of nation approach. I mean, Skill India is a great program. We have looked at Digital India and created a digital platform and a digital infrastructure, which is global levels. Today, the best of the nations want to eat out of India's hands when it comes to the digital public infrastructure of ours. I mean, the UPI system, payment system, is available to a street vendor. I mean, that is the kind of penetration that we've had thanks to our program. So really, India has got the ingredients today to step out into firstly creating self-sufficiency for itself and export competitiveness as we look at it. I mean, today, even in the defense sector, when we see our products going out, they are valued for both the quality and the cost. And people have huge faith in India because ours is perhaps the only country where every weapon system is tried and tested in every possible terrain and in every possible scenario. So really speaking, when you look at Atmanirbharata today, I think it's a great program. We need to look at it in a long-term perspective. We need to look at it as a whole of nation approach, and we need to look ourselves as being global manufacturers for huge amount of technology landscape, something that is being guaranteed through the Gati Shakti and other programs, which are all actually intertwined to get the Atmanirbhar Bharat dream into vision and vision into reality.
Uh, you have been supporting technology sovereignty for several years now. Given that the culture of R&D in new technologies yet to develop in India's private sector and even in our universities, how do you think that India can achieve technology sovereignty in and advanced countries? See, much of the research, defense research and other research also, is actually being done by the universities, and some of it is in the private sector hands, but bulk of it is in the universities. But in our universities, that kind of advanced research is not happening, very high level research. So that is where government has to actually come in. And private sector doesn't have the patience to invest in technologies that might start yielding profits after 15 years. They want to something that will yield them profit in the next 6 months or a year. So how do we develop this technology software?
Yeah, so you're so right. I've also been thinking about it, and the more I think it's always good to think big and aim big. And I think technology sovereignty to that extent is a very good thought. Why not is the question. And why I say it is that we have to look at it as a long-term game. And when we look at long-term game, I would love to mention about a book that I read on the 100-year marathon of China by Michael Pilsberg. It's a book which everybody must read to see that in 1949 they envisioned China of 2049 as a world leader. Because when you look at a long-term game, it takes time. Like they say, capability takes time to develop. Intention can change any time. And we have seen in our lives how the China that we knew suddenly unfolded into a very different China moment COVID came up. The whole world realized that we were actually eating out of their hands, whether it was manufacturing, whether it was services sector, whether it was any other technology. In fact, they are being touted as the AI superpower already. And what is that? That is technology sovereignty. But let me take a step back and talk about the Indian Integrated Guided Missile Development Program. This program was launched in 1984, we just alluded to it, with 5 missiles, with handpicked leadership, with an ecosystem to guarantee technology sovereignty in this, with a program structure which had 5 projects, Prithvi, Agni, Akash, Trishul, and Nag, and a systems group where every conceivable system of the missile was very well represented by subject matter experts. So a full ecosystem with very well-defined benchmarks and milestones embarked on a journey to create technology sovereignty in missile technology. Did we do it? The answer is yes. It is not a short-term game, and that's why when I think about it, I feel if we could do it in missiles, if we could do it in the digital public infrastructure that we have created and become an example globally, I think it's not a pipe dream, it's a long-term, long view reality. But it requires a methodology. So let me quickly walk you through some thoughts which I have on this. The first is that we need to have a national technology framework. which comprises a national technology structure. We need to have a proper structure in place. We need to, like IGMDP was a proper structure, it was a program, structured program. And that program had academia, industry, public-private partnership, and the government support all rolled into one. So it was a great program with finances, with the experimentation, because remember, when we look at technology, it's an experiment, and experiment means it can succeed or it can fail. But failure is better than success in R&D because it teaches you a hell of a lot. And I'm reminded of a story. Allow me to just
Yes.
tell you this story. I was in DRDL and we were having this Prithvi missile launch. And in the launch control center, we had Dr. Kalam along with Dr. Saraswat and others, of course. And I happened to be in the project also, Project Prithvi. And it was a very important missile fire for us because we'd had a series of 7 successes. And this was the 8th one. We had the Raksha Mantri, we had the 3 chiefs, we had the defense secretary and who's who, because after this launch, Prithvi was supposed to be user trial, evaluated and brought into the system. First time indigenous mega system was to get into the hands of the user. And there was huge excitement. Of course, a lot of media was there. And the missile took off like it did every time. But here, it went about 400 meters and then it crashed into the sea. And there was hushed silence. Of course, a lot of disappointment among most. But Dr. Kalam came in front of the media and he said that I've had 7 failures of Prithvi in the past, because today I realize we've had the first success. With each missile that was fired in the past, we never did a thorough post-flight analysis, and there's no R&D without failure. There's no experimental success without failure. So today, while the hall here feels it is a failure, for us scientists, it's a huge success. So I would request the media to announce Prithvi is successful, because we'll never ever fail again. The kind of data this 400 meters of ascent has given us will give us such a robust missile system that we'll feel proud of. So I think that is the psychology with which we have to look at technology sovereignty, with failure being a stepping stone, and without that, success means nothing. It's a hollow success. So really speaking, when we look at it, so we need to look at a strategy, we need to look at a structure. That's the kind of a framework we need to look at. We need to look at academia industry partnership. Now, there are some very well-defined rules of engagement. We have the technology readiness levels, which are very well defined, and we need to put it in our strategy where the low end, which is futuristic technologies, like you said, TRL 1 to 3 is given to academia. 4 to 6, which is where prototypes are getting ready, actually gets into a development agency with academia industry. And 7 to 9, where you have a prototype getting into production, is where industry takes over. So I think this continuum needs to be very clearly put together. And if we look at the journey we embarked on IGMDP, it's a very, very vivid example of what I've just said. So if we can open our books and case studies of IGMDP, I think technology sovereignty will become a reality. Now, if I were to say we have a mission semiconductor, we have a mission quantum, let's look at mission quantum. What if we converted it to a quantum technology program where we had management of qubits, management of quantum materials, management of quantum computing, and the science behind quantum as the systems group, and quantum radars, quantum sensors, quantum communication, quantum computers, and quantum-based cyber as the project. Automatically, the program starts showing results in a very fast mode. Why? Because each focus is very well defined in terms of the TRL levels, in terms of timelines, in terms of accomplishments to be done. And I think a program approach to technology management is a yawning need. Close on heels in this, I'd like to mention one more thing, that, when you open technology the way we've opened it now as a nation, there's a pitfall. And let me give you 2 examples here. When suddenly after the debt trap, when we opened our economy freely, we realized a lot of scams came up, and then SEBI came up with very strict controls. When real estate opened in India, again, real estate was let loose. We had a lot of scams and a lot of problems. And RERA now is actually the act which is regulating the whole thing. I think we need a National Technology Act. We already late for it. And this act has to look at one technology, one window. Let me qualify this further. Now, imagine I just gave you the example of IGMDP. If you had a loose program of where 20 people were developing the Prithvi missiles of different kinds and failing, look at the amount of human capital and the financial capital which goes into each of this. It becomes quite wasteful. Whereas if you harness the whole thing into a program mode with one technology, one player, put together under some control with academia, industry, very well, strewn around it, I think it will be well regulated. So therefore, there's a need to build a National Technology Act where things get very well defined. We have to look at IPR management. I think that's very, very important, especially when you look at foreign collaborations. If you are weak on IP and legal aspects of it, it gives you a lot of disadvantage. So when we look at technology, another very important thing is the IP management. So really, in the Act, we have to have technology, we have to have IP, and the third is an innovation framework. Now today, I'm with IIT Tirupati, we have a technology innovation hub in 23 IITs. Then we have Atal Innovation Missions. Then we have centers of excellence. Then we have incubators. Then we have accelerators. Then we have, so there is a huge ecosystem. Can we bring some orderliness through a technology act so that we harness the human capital and harness the economic might and bring in trajectory where direction takes, we have control over the direction and control over the speed for success. I think that's a need. So maybe I'll not deliberate more, but just to give a sense of what it is. Then I think we need to have a ministry now of science, technology, and innovation. We need to get a ministry with a lot of interministerial linkages. And here I'm thinking in terms of a national R&D. Like we have a DRDO, we have a ISRO, we have a RDSO with railways, we have the private R&D of industry. I think we need to have, through the Act, a national R&D structure. Now, let me give you one quick example here. We were doing the battlefield management system some time back, and it was becoming a very cost prohibitive exercise with industry. And luckily, we had good industry, but it was cost prohibitive. And then we found that railways, along with ISRO, had worked on a program to manage the unmanned railway crossings. And we found that this technology can easily be customized for the battlefield management system. So something that was happening in 2,300 crores as a program happened in about 10 lakhs. So that is the kind of pilot we could do to establish. So what I'm trying to say is, if you have a national R&D organization, it is easy to customize, it is easy to pick up something that has been done by somebody rather than everybody inventing their own wheel. As a part of technology sovereignty, I think we need to put all hands on the R&D deck together, and maybe the Act will again help in putting this together. I've already talked of the youth bulge, which is our demographic dividend in Skill India. I think that is a very important enabler. We may not have this opportunity again. This opportunity will be with us maybe another 20, 30 years. I think we need to harness this by certifying our youths as entrepreneurs, give them the entrepreneur tinge from secondary school level. They are doing wonders. Youngsters are doing wonders. I think we need to harness that energy. And my last recommendation here would be, we have a National Technology Day, 11th May. Can we keep the National Technology Day like the Budget Day, where the minister comes and tells us technology planning? How is the nation planning its technology? What is the next 1 year? What is the next 5 years? What is the audit so far? Where are we? What have we achieved? I think this will bring a new fervor, like it brings a new fervor in the budget. Every budget, the whole nation is glued to see what is happening. I mean, all of us may not be finance experts, but all of us are keen to know how is the deficit budget being managed? What is the allocations? Could we give a similar visage to technology? And if we did, I think we are inching towards a future technology sovereignty. And Viksit Bharat 2047 could well be a technology sovereign Bharat in large number of technologies. Like you correctly said, it need not be that we make everything here. But everything that is material, everything that is 80% need is ours. 20% we can manage through consortiums. So that is how I look at technology sovereignty.
The way you describe technology sovereignty, it seems that it will have an impact not just on defense, but on every other sector. And that's how it happens. If you look at the history of last 100 years, aviation, communications, even the internet, electronics, even healthcare and water supply, this has been developed in the advanced countries through, while they were trying to fulfill some defense needs. Eventually, these technologies came into the consumer space and the general society, and they have transformed the world. So if this Atmanirbhar Bharat becomes a reality in defense, it will actually transform Bharat. It will lead to, tectonic transformation in Bharat, not just in defense, but in every other sector. So what, if you were to be asked about your recommendations for the roadmap for the for Atmanirbhar Bharat, what policy decisions or steps can the government take, and the private sector also, to ensure this vision becomes a reality and the country is transformed?
Actually, you gave me a very good lead when you mentioned, if you look at DARPA as an example, artificial intelligence got discussed in 1951.
Yes.
Internet got discussed or World Wide Web got discussed in 1960s.
Even aviation. I mean, it was actually developed during the First and Second World Wars.
Yes.
So really, so many planes.
It's a dual space management when you look at defense. It's not pure defense because it has huge customization in the commercial space as well. And therefore, while I alluded something on technology sovereignty, maybe when we look at Atmanirbhar Bharat, a robust blueprint will firstly, we should look at aligning ourselves for the sustainable development goals achievement. I think those are the 17 pillars around which national development is very important. And if we were to look at it with that kind of a blueprint and a whole of nation approach, we will do it right. So therefore, the first thing to my mind is focus on strategic sectors. We look at semiconductors. We already started looking at semiconductors, quantum. It's a big leap. We look at consumer electronics and microelectronics, which is going to be the norm of the future. We look at renewable energies. We look at artificial intelligence. In fact, artificial intelligence, to my mind, is the future electricity. Like today, you cannot think of your existence without electricity. In times to come, you can't think of your existence without artificial intelligence. And therefore, that's a huge big footprint. So therefore, manufacturing and electronics are going to be two spearheads which are going to create the next big revolution. And Atmanirbhar Bharat must focus on that. Defense and aerospace is another big space with a huge dual use in the commercial field. And we should look at not only production, we have to look at life cycle sustenance management. Now, let me elaborate a little more on this. You see, when I said that defense equipment has a life cycle of 40 years, and today technology has a cycle of maybe 2 to 3 years. So imagine the kind of obsolescence and upgrades you have to go through. And therefore, I think MRO is going to be a big industry. The little research that I've done, in aviation sector alone, by 2030, it is going to be worth 400 billion. And if we were put on plate the complete spectrum, it may be anything upward of 800 billion MRO ability. So that's another big area where we have to look at not only production, look at the complete life cycle sustenance support. So that's another big area where the industry focus from production has to go to life cycle sustenance support. It'll help both for defense and commercial space. Obviously, every 2 years, you won't like to change your white electronics. You'd like to upgrade it with minimalistic cost, and so that it can give you optimum life. And then health and pharma is another great sector. When we look at Atmanirbhar, I think India showed a huge promise during COVID time when we gave to the world the vaccines for coronavirus. I think it was a great initiative taken by us. And if I were to say technology sovereignty again, I think we showed ourselves as a technologically sovereign nation where we met our own needs and had enough to spare for the global community. So really, that's another great sector we have. We are doing very well in India, and I think Indian medical teams abroad are creating the best impact. So that's another great area. Then agriculture, of course, food security is very, very important. And therefore, precision agriculture is the way forward. And I would say smart precision agriculture. We have to build the word smart everywhere, where smart S stands for specific, M for measurable, A for achievable, R for realistic, and T for time bound. I think we need to look at smart systems in Atmanirbhar program so that everything is time bound. And if there are slippages, which will be by failures, they are known and they are controlled. So that's very, very important. We need to harness our youth bulge. And here I'd like to bring a mention of two things. One is when we say harness of youth bulge, I think brain drain must get into brain circulation. Now, China has got this program of brain circulation where they pick up the top brains in China, send them abroad to the best of places, and after they've worked there for 10, 15 years and gained enough global experience, they come back to China and create that excellence there. And in that window. So really speaking, to harness this youth bulge, we need to have a very formal program for brain circulation. And that can start early. So that's another great area where we can do. I'd like to mention one more area here when we talk of youth bulge. Recently, I was in the US and I happened to visit the Cambridge Public Library. And the ground floor was like any other library where you have books, you have e-books, you've got video, visuals, and all the things that you need to enhance your knowledge base. But the interesting place was first floor where you had a room for 3D printing, a room for AR, VR, a lab for artificial intelligence, a lab for quantum. And we found school children coming there and 3D printing their toys, doing 3D printing projects, doing AR, VR projects, doing artificial intelligence data management projects. And I was attending the 3D printing class, and next to me was a 10-year-old boy making his own Ferrari. He was designing and developing his own Ferrari canopy. So I think when we say harnessing the youth bulge, and when I found that most of the public libraries in the US have these features. And not only this, they've got fine arts also. I mean, they've got a lot of things. So I think we need to look at creating such kind of infrastructure in it. When we say corporate social responsibility, I think this is a big value add we can do to harness our youth bulge by giving them the thirst for knowing more, the thirst for learning, and developing their skills as entrepreneurs, because that's where Atmanirbharata will prosper very fast. The direction will be there. We need to enhance our infrastructure, has to be a big focus. I'm happy we are all aware that there's huge focus on energy, renewable energy, and huge focus on infrastructure. I think this green growth is very, very important, and we must continue doing it. Then we need to look at huge amount of funding. I think the venture capitalists are coming up in India in a very big way, which is a great step forward. We have a lot of angel investors. We have a lot of banks. We have Exim Bank also, who are actually looking at how to harness the entrepreneurial spirit of India. I think that is very important. One recommendation I have is something like we did corporate social responsibility through a Companies Act in 2013. I think we need to do a corporate professional act or CPR fund, a corporate professional responsibility fund, which could be another 2% dedicated for technology with tax subsidies, tax rebates, and maybe tax holidays based on the technology they work in, so that the funding that is required for this does not go dry. I think that's another very important thing we need to look at when we look at Atmanirbhar Bharat. And the last is innovation setup, like we spoke about under the National Technology Act. If we have a technology setup with one technology, one window, I think the direction will be very clear and the speed automatically will follow. So that's very, very important. And to put all this together, I think we need to have a policy regulatory framework so that we propel a lot of foreign direct investment as well. I think that's an area where the whole world is looking at us. After the COVID, China's taken a beating in manufacturing and every other aspect where they were prospering. And I wouldn't say they're not prospering any further, but I think India can take a center stage now through a policy and a regulatory framework, empower the industry, empower the MSME ecosystem. And I think that will create the next ripple. And last but not the least, I think the whole world now is moving from automation to autonomy. And therefore, we need to look at industrial automation to industrial autonomy. The future industry has to be autonomous. And that's where and to conclude, therefore, the Atmanirbhar Bharat has to work on 5 prongs or 5 pillars, conceptual pillars. The first conceptual pillar is automation, which we have really done very well, followed by autonomy, followed by precision and positioning. And the last pillar is artificial intelligence. I think if these 5 pillars, automation to autonomy, precision and positioning, with artificial intelligence thrown in, if we look at these 5 pillars, I think we'll revolutionize every possible sector in our endeavor to be Atmanirbhar and pride ourselves as the global hub, not only for technology and manufacturing, but for every possible aspect of sustainment development. So that is my take on the Atmanirbhar dream.
That's a very realistic and seems like a workable plan for creating a defense economy in the country. And now that we are having a long-term goal, like Viksit Bharat, we don't have a 100-year goal like China that you talked about, but it's a 25-year plan. It's still a long-term goal. So we might end up achieving something good out of it and developing the economy by 2047. Thank you, Lieutenant General Kapoor, for talking to us.
Thank you so much. And thank you to the team. I think it was a pleasure. And thank you for the very thought-provoking questions that you posed. It was very interesting and professionally stimulating. Thank you for this opportunity. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay.